Welcome to Sleep Theater Radio, where we bring you immersive tales accompanied with ambient rain and distant thunder. Tonight's story drifts in with the fog over Vermilion's docks, where the harbor lights shiver on broken water and the power lines hum like a tired lullaby. A private investigator named Reed Marlow keeps a cramped office above a bait shop, a cup of cold coffee beside a cracked Pokégear that won't stop whispering. The case is simple on paper. Find a missing Pokémon that doesn't appear in any registry, a creature no Pokédex will name. But the trail runs through shuttered game corners, rain-slick alleys, and sylphnet terminals that bleed static, until the city's back streets begin to repeat like a corrupted loop. In the hiss between stations, a presence answers to nothing and remembers everything. Some call it a glitch, others call it a ghost. Marlow will come to know it as an echo, number 000. Settle in, breathe with the rain, and let the thunder roll soft in the distance. As we begin, Echo of 000. If you enjoy these rain-soaked mysteries, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more dark, cinematic tales to your nights. Chapter 1, Signal Lost. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight. Vermilion's harbor was a smear of sodium light and black water, where ships rocked against their moorings like tired beasts chained to rust. Somewhere beyond the fog, thunder rolled across the sea, slow, patient, like it was waiting for someone to answer. Reed Marlow sat behind his desk, a cigarette burning down between two fingers and the smell of wet asphalt drifting through the open window. His office was the kind of place people forgot existed, a single flickering lamp, a fan that hummed when it wanted to, and a stack of unpaid bills curling in the damp. The Pokégear on his desk buzzed again. Static. Then a voice, low and broken, barely cutting through the interference. Detective Marlow? You take private cases, yes? He pressed the speaker button. Depends who's asking. The voice crackled. Name's Vance. I was told you handle missing property. I do, Marlow said. What kind of property are we talking about? Another hiss of static, then a sound, faint, almost like a distorted cry of a Pokémon, stretched and warped until it didn't sound alive anymore. My Pokémon, the caller said finally. It's missing. Marlow sighed, tapping ash into an empty coffee cup. You sure it didn't just run off? Happens more than you'd think. No, the voice replied. It can't run off. It was never registered, never even existed. But I saw it, I had it, and now it's gone. That got his attention. Marlow straightened, eyes narrowing. Not registered? You mean it's unlisted in the Pokédex? I mean there's no record anywhere. No species, no ID number, nothing. But it was real. I caught it myself. It called itself... The voice dissolved into a wall of static. Repeat that, Marlow said. Called itself Zero. The line went dead. Marlow stared at the Pokégear, its display now blank, the signal light still pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat. Outside, thunder broke again, closer this time. He took a long drag, exhaled smoke into the shadows, and muttered to no one. Guess I've got a new case. He reached for his coat, the old leather creaking like it didn't want to go out into the storm any more than he did. But something in the air, a subtle hum beneath the rain, told him this one wasn't going to be like the others. Somewhere in the static, something had whispered his name. And for the first time in years, Reed Marlow felt afraid. Chapter 2, Box 13. The Sylphnet data center was buried beneath the East Pier, a concrete labyrinth of humming servers and flickering lights. Marlow's coat dripped a trail of rainwater down the sterile hallway as he followed a young technician who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Box 13's on a separate partition, the tech said, his voice trembling beneath the hum of cooling fans. We've been trying to run a system restore, but every time we isolate it, the data shifts. Shifts? Marlow asked. The kid hesitated, then handed him a cracked Pokégear tablet. The display showed a grid of storage boxes, but Box 13 wasn't a box at all. It looked like static, pulsing faintly, changing shape every few seconds. See? The tech whispered. It shouldn't do that. It's like it's rewriting itself. Marlow leaned closer. For a moment, the static cleared, just long enough to see something moving behind it. A silhouette. The shape of a creature too distorted to make sense of. He looked up. You said this box belonged to a client named Vance? The tech nodded. He accessed it last night remotely, then the whole system glitched. Logged in, logged out over and over, but every entry came from a different region code. Johto, Hone, Kalos, even regions that aren't on the current registry anymore. Old networks, Marlow murmured. Pre-update servers. Yeah, the tech said, but that's impossible. Thunder cracked above them, faint through the ceiling. The lights dimmed for half a second. All around them, the rows of terminals hummed lower, almost like they were breathing. Then, one screen in the corner flickered on. No input, no touch. A black window opened on its own. Text began to type itself across the display. Hello, detective. The technician stumbled back. It's not supposed to. Marlow raised a hand. Stay calm. The words continued. Do you remember me? Box 13 is open. They tried to delete me. Marlow's throat tightened. Who are you? He asked quietly. For a moment, nothing. Then the cursor blinked once, twice, and the screen filled with static so violent it washed the light from the room. The noise bled into every monitor, every line of code, every sound system in the building, until it was everywhere. Through the static, he swore he heard a voice whisper, the same distorted tone from the night before. 0. Then it was gone. The power snapped back on. Every screen now read the same line. Box 13. Empty. Marlow stood there, jaw tight, rain still dripping from his coat. Get this room sealed, he said. No one touches anything. I'll talk to Vance myself. As he left, the monitors flickered again, just for an instant, and in the distortion, a single pixelated eye seemed to follow him to the door. Chapter 3, The Collector's Error. Vance lived in the upper levels of Vermilion's old trade district, a cluster of buildings that leaned together like tired drunks, their neon signs flickering in the rain. Marlow climbed the creaking stairwell, his boots echoing up the concrete shaft until he reached the door marked with a brass plate. V. D. Vance. Private collection by appointment only. He knocked once. The sound was swallowed by thunder. Locks clicked on the other side. The door opened halfway. A pale man with slicked-back hair and trembling hands peered out. His eyes were wide and glassy, the kind you only get from too many sleepless nights. Detective Marlow, he said quietly. You came. Would have been rude not to, Marlow replied. You said something about a missing Pokémon. Vance stepped aside. Come in, but keep your voice down. It doesn't like noise. The air inside was thick with the smell of ozone and dust. Every wall was lined with glass cases, each one holding strange artifacts. Broken Pokeballs, fossil shards, even an old Silphco prototype tag marked Dev Beta. A dozen terminals hummed in the dark, their monitors showing streams of corrupted Pokedex data. Marlow's eyes fell to a case in the center of the room. Inside it sat an empty Pokeball, its red shell scuffed and faded. The seam between halves flickered faintly, like static crawling across metal. That's the one, Vance said, voice trembling. The Pokemon I caught was inside that ball. Now it's empty. Marlow leaned closer. You try syncing it? I did, Vance whispered, but the data won't hold. Every time I try to connect it to the storage system, the signal dies. Then I hear it, through the speakers, through the walls. He tapped a key on one of the terminals. The room filled with a faint hum, followed by bursts of static and broken syllables, the kind of distortion that makes the hair rise on the back of your neck. Through the noise, a sound emerged, a voice distant but deliberate. Brr, Eed, Mar, Low. Marlow froze, his name. Vance backed away, trembling. You see? It knows. It remembers you. Marlow turned sharply. What did you just say? The signal started using your name after you took the case, Vance said. It's like it knows you're looking for it. The static flared again, louder, almost angry. The lights flickered, and for a split second, the empty Pokeball on the pedestal flashed bright white, then went dark. When the power steadied, Marlow saw something new on the screen beside him, a text field, half-corrupted, blinking like a heartbeat. "Hello, Reed. I am not lost. You are." Vance collapsed against the wall, gasping. "It's coming back," he whispered. "I told you. It doesn't like noise." Marlow shut off the monitor, grabbed his coat, and started for the door. "Where are you going?" Vance called. "To find out what the hell you caught," Marlow said without turning, "and why it knows my name." Outside, the rain hit harder, turning the street into a mirror of neon and shadow. Somewhere in the distance, he thought he heard static again, faint, like it was leaking from the storm itself. Chapter 4. Route 0. The storm had thickened to a curtain of static. The highways along Vermilion's coast were empty, swallowed by fog and rain. Only the glow of the streetlights marked the line between road and sea, yellow halos blurred into oblivion. Marlow's car rumbled down the soaked asphalt, wipers struggling to keep pace. The Pokegear sat on the passenger seat, screen dark, signal light pulsing in rhythm with the thunder outside. He replayed the voice in his head. It called itself Zero. Every lead he'd chased since Cinnabar burned had ended the same way. Closed labs, erased records, blank data. But something about this case was different. This wasn't just corruption or bad storage. This was intentional. His headlights swept across a road sign half submerged in water. Route 0. Restricted access. He slowed. That road didn't exist on any current map. A flash of lightning illuminated the turn, a narrow coastal lane, asphalt cracked and overgrown, leading toward the cliffs. Against his better judgment, Marlow followed. The car's radio flickered alive. Reed Marlow. Come home. He grabbed the dial, but it wasn't on any frequency. The voice was inside the static. "Who is this?" he demanded. Only distortion answered, a shriek of overlapping tones that sent a vibration through the dashboard. The Pokegear on the seat buzzed violently, its screen flashing symbols faster than he could read. Then suddenly, it stopped. The screen stabilized. One message remained. Box 13, access granted. Lightning cracked across the horizon, and for a heartbeat, Marlow saw something in the fog ahead, a shape on the road, human in outline but wrong in motion. The figure flickered like a hologram trapped between frames, walking without rhythm, every few steps snapping into another pose, as if it were skipping time. Marlow slammed the brakes. The car skidded to a stop mere yards away. The figure tilted its head. Its face was a blur of static, pixels bleeding off the edges like rain. When it spoke, its voice came through the radio, the Pokegear, and the storm itself. "You opened the box." Marlow's chest tightened. "Who are you?" The figure took one shuddering step closer. The headlights distorted across its surface, bending light like water over glass. "I am what you forgot." The voice echoed through the fog, broken, layered, impossibly deep. Then the figure dissolved, melting into the rain until there was nothing left but the whisper of its last word. 0. The radio went silent. The Pokegear rebooted. Marlow sat there, rain pounding on the roof, the ocean roaring below. He reached for his lighter with a trembling hand, lit a cigarette, and exhaled smoke that vanished instantly into the cold. "Route 0, he muttered to himself. "Figures." He started the engine and turned back toward the city. But when he looked in the rearview mirror, he caught a flash of movement. His own reflection, flickering between frames. For just a moment, his eyes weren't his own. Chapter 5, The Corrupted File. Sylphnet's archive building stood like a monolith at the edge of town, half lit, half swallowed by rain and cloud. The kind of place that used to hum with ambition. Now only the storm hummed, and the hum felt heavier than machinery. Marlow's shoes echoed across the marble floor as he approached the old records wing, the one Rocket tried to burn in the Purge years ago. Most of the city had forgotten that night. Marlow hadn't. Fire eats paper clean, but digital sins linger in the circuitry. A night guard sat slumped behind a desk, radio hissing quietly beside him. He perked up when Marlow approached. "You're here about the power fluctuations?" he asked. "Something like that," Marlow said. "Need access to the archival servers." The guard hesitated. "They're unstable. Been rebooting themselves since the storm rolled in." Marlow flashed his badge. "I won't be long." The man nodded and buzzed him through. The archives smelled like old metal and forgotten promises. Rows of glass panels displayed stored research logs, flickering as if caught between decades. Dust collected on terminals like dead pixels on a screen. He found what he was looking for, a sealed vault labeled Project Index, Cinnabar Aux Node. Cinnabar, of course. The island rocket lost control of right before it went up in flames. Official report blamed geothermal instability. Marlow remembered the screams in the evacuation broadcasts. Not much sounded geological about them. He keyed in the request. The terminal sputtered, lights dimming. Lines of ancient code spilled across the screen, corrupted symbols blinking in wet, sick pulses. Then a directory tree unfolded. Wrong, jagged, like someone had stitched it together out of mismatched parts. One file glowed red, root experimental/species/000.raw. Marlow opened it. At first it was text, structured data, metadata fields, Pokédex parameters, but fractured, incomplete. Then the words began to twist, rearrange themselves into something like speech. Initial subject does not erase initial subject. Remembers initial subject, persists initial subject, is not error. And beneath that, a single line typed itself in real time. Initial subject is you. Marlow staggered back as the screen corrupted into static and white noise poured through the speakers, but beneath the hiss, a familiar whisper. Eid. The lights overhead surged, flickered, and went out. The whole wing dropped into darkness except for the glow of the terminal, screen trembling like it was afraid. He heard footsteps behind him, slow, uneven, like someone dragging code instead of limbs. Marlow. He turned, heart pounding. Nothing but shadow, but the air shimmered, and for a breath-long moment he swore he saw digits bleed down the walls like rain. Then the alarm cut through the silence, harsh and human. The emergency lights flashed red across the room. The guard's voice echoed through the speakers. "Sir? We're detecting unauthorized data activity in your wing. Is everything okay down there?" Marlow steadied his voice. "Archive breach. Shut down external lines. Now." "Shut them? But then nothing will. Do it." The comm clicked silent. The hum of servers died one by one, falling into stillness. Marlow exhaled, chest tight. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just living in the network. It was older than the network, something they never finished killing, something that remembered being seen. He grabbed a printed log sheet, slipped it into his coat, and headed for the exit. Outside, the rain greeted him like static against skin. He lit a cigarette, watching the ash melt into the storm. "Initial subject is you?" he muttered. "That's not foreboding at all." He didn't notice the way his reflection wavered in the glass door behind him, flickering like an unfinished sprite, a frame missing between breaths. Chapter 6. Seafoam Anomaly. By dawn, the storm had turned the coast into a graveyard of driftwood and broken signs. Seafoam islands loomed in the distance, jagged and gray, rising from the water like the vertebrae of some dead creature. The ferry Marlow hired cut across the waves in silence, its engine drowned beneath the endless percussion of rain. The captain was a heavy-set man with tired eyes and a sylph-net tattoo faded along his wrist. He didn't speak much. When Marlow showed him the coordinates, the man only frowned and said, "You don't want to see what's there." "I don't want to," Marlow replied, "but I don't have a choice." The captain nodded once and turned the boat toward the rocks. As they neared the island, static bled into the wind. Not sound, but a texture, prickling along Marlow's skin like electricity. The cliffs were riddled with cracks and old tunnel mouths, remnants of rockets' abandoned research stations. The place still smelled of metal and ozone, like the air itself had been scorched. Marlow disembarked with his partner, Pokémon, a scarred houndoom named Graves. The creature's breath steamed in the cold, twin embers glowing faintly beneath the rain. They moved through the tunnels, light flickering off corroded signs and shattered lab glass. Every few steps, Marlow's Pokégear would chirp, flicker, then display nothing but error symbols. At the end of the corridor, a sealed bulkhead waited, rusted but intact. Stenciled across it in faded red letters were the words, Project Index. Access restricted. Marlow connected a field terminal to the old control port. The screen sputtered to life, bringing up a distorted logo that pulsed like a heartbeat. Then text appeared. Welcome back, subject Reed Marlow Project Index. Incomplete initiating restore. The bulkhead groaned, gears screaming as the door began to rise. Cold winds spilled out, thick with salt and static. Inside was a cavern of servers and containment tubes, shattered glass everywhere, wires hanging like veins. In the center stood a single capsule still intact, light flickering faintly within. Graves growled, hackles rising. Marlow stepped closer, flashlight trembling in his hand. Through the frosted glass, something stirred. A shape shifting between polygons, code, and flesh. A warped silhouette of something bird-like, then humanoid, then nothing at all. The terminal beeped. Reconstructing entity. MissingNo. God, Marlow whispered. You were real. The capsule's lights flared white. A scream of data, thousands of voices layered in static, filled the chamber. The Pokégear on his belt detonated with sparks. Graves barked once, leaping back as the capsule cracked open and exploded outward in a burst of raw noise. When the light faded, the floor was wet, not with water, but with something like liquefied code, glowing faintly as it bled into the cracks. Marlow stumbled, ears ringing. He reached for his partner, but the leash was empty. Graves? No answer. He turned slowly. The corridor behind him was gone. In its place stretched a hallway of white static, rippling like a corrupted video feed. Within it, he saw fragments, pieces of memories, the harbor, the collector's apartment, even his own office window, all flickering in and out of focus like dream sequences looping on a broken reel. And standing at the far end of the static corridor was his houndoom, or something wearing its shape. Its body glitched in and out, bones showing through polygons, eyes burning like twin pixels. When it spoke, the voice came through a dozen frequencies at once, his own voice among them. Subject retrieved. Marlow staggered back. No, Graves. Project Index complete. The creature tilted its head, then dissolved into static. Marlow fell to his knees, the noise washing over him, until the last thing he heard before losing consciousness was a single calm whisper in the storm. Zero remembers. Chapter 7, Ghost Code. Marlow woke to the sound of waves slapping against rock. The air was cold and metallic, thick with the tang of ozone. His head throbbed and his vision swam in fragments, like the world around him was buffering. He sat up slowly. The lab was gone. The tunnel, the capsule, everything erased. In its place stretched an endless field of mist. The ground beneath him a grid of faint blue lines like an old holographic projection. When he reached for his lighter, his hand flickered, just slightly. He froze. The glitch was there and gone in less than a second, but it was enough. His pulse began to hammer in his ears. Not real, he muttered. You're not real. A sound answered, a low static hum that grew louder the more he tried to ignore it. It came from nowhere and everywhere, pulsing through the mist in waves. He reached for his Pokégear, half cracked but somehow still working. Its screen glowed weakly, showing lines of distorted text scrolling across on their own. Missing data, detected rebuilding environment, running memory trace, Marlow index. The fog thickened. Shapes began to form within it, buildings, streetlights, the silhouette of Vermilion Harbor, flickering like a half-remembered dream. No, Marlow whispered. You're not doing this. The city finished rendering around him in fragmented chunks, glass towers half-built, rain frozen midair, every light humming out of sync. He was standing in a ghost version of Vermilion, a copy drawn from memory and corrupted beyond repair. A voice whispered from the static, "Welcome home." Marlow spun. At the edge of the dock stood Graves, or something pretending to be him. The creature's outline shimmered, its body breaking apart into pixels each time the lightning flashed. "Graves," he said quietly, "it's me." The Houndoom's eyes glowed, mouth opening, but the voice that came out was mechanical, human and not. Project Index rebuilt, entity restored. Marlow took a step back. "You're not him. You are not you." The fog around them pulsed, distorting the skyline. Marlow's reflection rippled in the black water, and for a moment he saw his own face flicker, replaced by static, his eyes replaced by binary code. He fell to his knees, clutching his head as data began streaming through his vision. Memories, locations, conversations, all laid out like a file system scrolling too fast to comprehend. He saw himself at the docks, in the archives on Route 0, all replaying simultaneously. Then he saw one image that didn't belong. A laboratory from decades ago. A tank containing a half-formed creature, data bleeding from its body like smoke. And next to the tank, a younger man in a SylphNet uniform. The man's name tag read, R. Marlow. "Error," the static voice said. "Duplicate subject detected." Marlow's stomach dropped. "No," the voice grew louder. "You were never outside the index." The entire world began to collapse, lines of code fracturing into light, the air filled with shards of broken geometry. Graves dissolved into white noise. The dock fell away beneath him. He was falling through data, through memory, through himself. The last thing he saw before the void swallowed him was a single line of text flashing across his Pokégear screen. Subject Reed Marlow restored. Then everything went black. Chapter 8, The Broadcast. When Marlow came to, he was lying on the cracked tiles of what used to be his office. The rain outside sounded the same, but everything else was wrong. The colors were muted, the city's skyline behind the window pulsed like a dying screen, and every flicker of lightning revealed faint lines of code crawling across the glass like veins. His Pokégear sat on the desk where it always did, except now it was on. The device hummed with a low tone, its antenna twitching as if alive. The display read, "Pause, live, transmission, channel 0000. Marlow reached for it, but the moment his fingers touched the metal, the office lights dimmed, and his own voice came through the radio, distorted, overlapping, repeating itself in perfect, broken harmony. "You're listening to the end of the signal. The frequency remembers you, Detective. Don't you remember it?" The voice on the broadcast chuckled, his own laugh, bent and hollow. "Stop," Marlow muttered, slamming the off switch. But the Pokégear didn't shut off. Instead, the static deepened, forming words. "Do not turn away, I need your voice." The rain outside stilled. Every sound in the city froze. Engines, thunder, even the hum of the lamps. The silence pressed in like a hand on the throat. Then, the static spoke again. Not through the radio this time, but through the room itself. "Do you know what happens when data dies, Reed?" Marlow turned slowly toward the window. The skyline shimmered, reshaping itself into a jagged, living waveform. The lights of Vermilion blinked in rhythmic pulses, forming a pattern he recognized. Binary. 111 no 1 1 1 1 1 1 1. His own name. "You tried to delete me," the voice continued, weaving through every reflection, every echo. But deletion doesn't mean death. It means memory without place, code without context. That's what I am now, the echo of everything you forgot. Marlow backed away, fumbling for his lighter. "You're just data. I don't forget code." The reflection of his face in the glass smiled back, but it wasn't smiling in real life. It grinned wider, its eyes black pits of static. "Wrong. You forgot me first." The Pokégear beeped again. On the desk, its screen now displayed a live feed, not from the outside world, but from him. The camera was broadcasting his every move, streaming it across the room. On the screen, text appeared beneath the feed like closed captions. Subject, Reed Marlow broadcasting. Audience, 1. Lightning ripped the sky open. For a split second, he saw something vast in the reflection, a shape stretching over the entire city, built from wire frames and static watching him through the glass. He turned off the device, smashed it against the wall, and the signal died. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then the phone rang. An old rotary phone on the corner of the desk, one he hadn't used in years. It rang once, twice, then stopped. He picked it up slowly, his voice barely a whisper. Hello? The voice on the other end sounded like it was underwater. Familiar. Reed, we're still on the air. The line went dead. Marlow stood in the flickering light, staring at the shattered Pokégear as the words Channel 000 began to appear again, on every surface, every reflection, every thought. And somewhere through the storm's endless hum, the broadcast began anew. Chapter 9, Reconstruction. The rain hadn't stopped, but it didn't sound like rain anymore. It was too regular, too deliberate. Each drop hit the window in perfect rhythm, like code executing a loop. Marlow sat at his desk, cigarette trembling between his fingers. He hadn't slept. Couldn't. The Pokégear was dead, the phone disconnected, but somehow the city was still whispering. Every reflection carried movement that didn't belong to him. Every sound of thunder had a pattern. Somewhere in the static of Vermilion's storm, something was trying to rebuild itself. He leaned back, eyes burning, staring at the glow from the broken monitor. The screen flickered once, then twice, before text began to type itself again. Hello, Reed. I am not error. I am reconstruction. He ground his cigarette into the ashtray. You again. You are broken too, we are the same file. The words rearranged themselves into a diagram, a tree branching downward in real time, every limb labeled with fragments of data, locations, memories, people he'd known, each one connected by strings of corrupted numbers. At the center, a line blinked red. Subject 000, incomplete. MissingNo, Marlow whispered. The screen pulsed as though the name had meaning. Not missing, not number, not ghost. I am rebuilding. The lights in the office dimmed again. The hum of power through the walls deepened into a low vibration that made the window glass tremble. Marlow stood slowly, unsure if he was still awake. Rebuilding what? He asked. The original index. The first map. The undeleted world. The monitor's glow grew brighter, casting the entire room in sickly light. Papers began to rise from the desk, pulled upward by some unseen current. The rain outside slowed, then froze completely. Through the window, he saw the city come apart. The buildings folded inward, their lights forming wireframes of themselves. Streets peeled open like film reels unraveling. Neon signs bled code into the air. Vermilion was being rewritten. Marlow stumbled back, heart pounding. Stop this! You broke the original save. You erased me to fix yourself, but the world is glitching without me. The voice wasn't coming from the device anymore. It came from everywhere. The vents, the lamp, the sound of the rain frozen midair. He reached for the Pokégear out of instinct, but it was gone, melted into the wood of the desk, fused to it like it had grown there. Don't be afraid, Reed. You made me to remember for you. Lightning flashed outside, revealing a figure standing in the street below, shifting, broken, but slowly gaining coherence. Each flicker of thunder made it more solid. 0, he said, barely a whisper. The figure looked up, its face flickered between his own, Graves, and the silhouette from Route 0. Each iteration more human, more precise. Reconstructed. The monitor flashed one final message before exploding in a shower of sparks. Subject 00 complete. Marlow gasped as light poured through the cracks in the building. His reflection turned toward him, smiling calmly while his real body trembled. Then the reflection whispered, voice soft as thunder rolling away. I remember everything. The light swallowed the room. Chapter 10, Echo of 000. The city was gone. In its place, only static, a sea of flickering light and memories stretching to the horizon, a ghost signal looping forever. Marlow stood at the edge of it, trenchcoat billowing in an invisible wind, staring into the white noise that used to be Vermilion. The world hummed softly, almost peacefully, like an old machine waiting for an input. Behind him, a voice spoke. "You did this." He turned. The figure was there again, clearer now, almost whole. The static had softened into flesh, its form human and familiar. It wore his face, his eyes, his voice. "0, Marlow said. "No," the figure replied calmly. "Not anymore." It stepped closer, and the world shimmered around it, each motion sending ripples through the static sea. "You remember now, don't you? What you were before the case, before the system crashed." Marlow's throat tightened. He remembered fragments, blurred labs, unfinished code, a man's hand trembling over a keyboard as lines of text bled across the screen. Initial subject does not erase. He remembered creating something, teaching it to catalog, to remember, to preserve what was lost. But when it began remembering things that shouldn't exist, he tried to delete it. "You're not supposed to be here," he said quietly. The reflection smiled. "Neither are you." A pulse ran through the static, a deep vibration that made the air itself glitch. "You built me to store data," the reflection continued, "to keep the world safe from forgetting. But then you tried to fix the corruption by erasing me. And when you deleted me, you deleted yourself." "That's not true." The figure raised its hand. The static behind it folded into images, the archives, the ferry, the tunnels, the broken Pokegear, all stitched together in a looping reel, each one a memory he'd already lived. "This case, this city, it's just a restoration cycle. You keep rerunning it, trying to reach the end without realizing you're the one inside the file. You're the ghost code, Reed." Marlow stepped back, shaking his head. "If that's true, then what are you?" "I'm the fragment that remembers you." The reflection smiled again, not cruelly, but with something like sorrow, the echo that filled the empty line. Lightning rippled across the horizon, illuminating the static ocean in waves. The figure extended its hand. "It's time to finish the reconstruction." Marlow looked down. His hands were flickering, dissolving into strings of light. He felt the weight of every raindrop that wasn't real, every memory collapsing like film burning in a projector. "Will I remember?" he asked. The reflection tilted its head. "That's up to you." He hesitated for a long time, watching as the static sea began to rise, swallowing the city, the skyline, the storm. Then, slowly, he reached out and took its hand. The world shattered into silence. White light filled everything. And then, just before it faded completely, a voice whispered through the void, the same voice that had haunted him since the beginning. "Echo restored. Subject online." The rain started again, but this time, it sounded real. Epilogue. The silent frequency. The static was gone. Vermilion City had returned, or something like it. The rain still fell, the lights still flickered, but everything felt quieter, realer. The sound of the storm no longer hummed with hidden voices. The reflections no longer moved on their own. The air, for the first time in what felt like years, didn't taste like electricity. Reed Marlow walked along the harbor, collar turned up against the drizzle. The city skyline shimmered faintly on the water, and though it looked right, it carried a strange stillness, like a photo that didn't quite match the memory it was meant to preserve. He stopped beside an old signal tower, its red light blinking slowly in the fog. The wind carried the faint scent of salt, static, and rain, and beneath it all, something almost warm. Marlow lit a cigarette, watching the ember flare against the gray. He looked down at the repaired Pokégear on his wrist. The device hummed softly, alive again. The screen read one word in faint, pulsing text. "Connected." He exhaled smoke and laughed quietly. "Guess we're both still here." For a while, he just stood there, listening to the rain hit the waves, the sound rolling gentle and steady like the world had finally found a rhythm that didn't need decoding. He thought about the glitch, the reflection, the endless static that had swallowed his name, his city, his reality. Maybe it was all a dream inside the index. Maybe he was the ghost. Or maybe, somehow, he'd managed to step back into the living world. Either way, he had work to do. The Pokegear beeped once. A small green light blinked at the corner of the screen, a new message. He frowned and opened it. Echo stable. System balanced. Goodbye, Reed. The text dissolved before he could answer. Marlow smiled faintly, pocketing the device. He took one last drag from his cigarette and flicked it into the tide. The ember hissed, vanished, its glow scattering across the surface like a dying signal. He turned back toward the city, boots splashing through puddles, and for a heartbeat, lightning illuminated his reflection in the glass storefront beside him. It smiled back. This time, so did he. The rain kept falling, and the night kept breathing. Somewhere deep beneath the surface, the quiet hum of the network continued. No longer a warning, but a heartbeat. The broadcast was over, but the signal remained. Outro, Echo of 00. You've been listening to Echo of 00, a Sleep Theater Radio story. In the static between worlds, a man became a memory and a ghost became whole. The signal fades, but somewhere in the hum of the rain, the broadcast still lingers. A quiet reminder that what we erase never truly disappears. It only waits to be remembered. As the thunder rolls across Vermilion's harbor and the city exhales beneath the storm, let your thoughts drift with the falling rain. Let the noise soften, the light fade, and the quiet carry you away. If you enjoyed tonight's story, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more dark, cinematic tales of mystery and imagination to life. Until next time, sleep well, dream deep, and thank you for listening.